video, we're going to find the greatest common factor with me, Catherine. Let's review for a minute. Remember from whole number multiplication that factors are the numbers being multiplied together to get the product, the answer of a multiplication. Let me show you some examples. 9 times 5 equals 45. 9 is a factor, and 5 is a factor, because we're multiplying them together to get our answer, the product. Negative 2 times x. Well, negative 2 is a factor, and x is a factor, because we're multiplying those two together to get our product of negative 2x. It even works when we multiply vertically. Here's my factor, and then here's my product. The greatest common factor, or GCF, is the largest number that divides evenly into all of the numbers. Let's look at these numbers, 5, 15, and 20. To figure out the factors, I know that 5 is 5 times 1. Then I look at 15. Is 5 a factor of 15? It sure is, 5 times 3. When I look at 20, is 5 a factor of 20? Yeah, 5 times 4. 5 is your greatest common factor. Why is it the greatest common factor? Because 5 is the largest number that can be divided into each number evenly. That means we don't get a remainder. Let's look at an example. The first thing that we want to do is list all prime numbers for each factor. That means we have to do the factor tree. The first thing I thought of is 3 times 4. You could have said 2 times 6. It doesn't matter. We're going to get the same answer. 3 is prime, but 4 is 2 times 2. Next, we're going to line the common prime factors above each other and circle the common factors. So that's why I wrote 12 equals 3 times 2 times 2. Let's look at 16. 16 is 4 times 4. You could have written 2 times 8. It doesn't matter. Well, 4 is not prime because 4 is 2 times 2. Once again, 4 is 2 times 2. So 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Do you notice that I wrote the common factors above each other? That's because what we are going to do next is find the common ones, which is super easy. We're just going to circle them. Then we're going to multiply those together. 2 times 2 is 4, and that gives us the greatest common factor, and that's it. Let's look at this one. Once again, we're going to do a factor tree. 22 is 2 times 11. 2 is prime and 11 is prime. Y to the 4th power is y times y times y times y. So we're going to write that down. 55y squared, well, 55 is 5 times 11. 5 is prime and 11 is prime. And then we have y times y. So let's write that down. You're going to notice that I wrote common factors on top of each other because now we can definitely see that 11 times y, which is 11y squared, is our greatest common factor. Here's 2 for you to try. You're going to pause the video, practice, and then press play to check. Alright, let's see how you did. 45. Well, 45 is 5 times 9. 5 is prime, but 9 is 3 times 3. So 45 equals 5 times 3 times 3. 36 is 6 times 6. 6 is not prime. 6 is 2 times 3. Well, 2 and 3 are prime. That's great. Then the other 6 is also 2 times 3. So we have 36 equals 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Now all we have to do is circle the common factors and multiply. 3 times 3 is 9. So that's my greatest common factor. In the next two, 10 is 5 times 2. 5 and 2 are both prime. X to the 3rd power is x times x times x. So we're going to write x to the 3rd equals 5 times 2 times x times x times x. 18 is 9 times 2, but 9 is not prime. So we have 3 times 3. X squared is x times x. So now I'm going to write it. You're going to notice that I wrote the same factors on top of each other because now when I circle them, I can definitely see my greatest common factors. 2 times x, which is 2x squared. And guess what? That's the greatest common factor. Yeah, not too bad. Let's look at this example. Now I'm going to give you a really big hint. The smallest exponent is the greatest common factor. Whew, we don't have to write all the x's out anymore. When I look at 14x to the 5th, 20x squared, and 20x to the 4th, I see that x squared is the smallest exponent. So that's actually going to be our greatest common factor for the x's. 20 is 2 times 10. Now with this one, I'm not going to do prime factorization because I know ahead of time that 2 is the only common factor. You can do 2 times 2 times 5. That's completely fine. So let's write it out. Let's look at 14x to the 5th. Now on this one, I want to split it so I have an x squared. I know that when I multiply, I add the exponents. So x squared times x to the 3rd is actually x to the 5th. 14, well that's 2 times 7. There we go. Let's look at 26. Well, 26 has x to the 4th. That's the same as x squared times x squared. 26 is 2 times 13. Let's write that in there. Great. So you can see that 2 times 10 works perfect. If I had started with 14, I would have seen right away that 2 times 7 is 14. And the only common factors in the other two are either 2 or 7. Now we're going to circle the common factors. There we are, and there we are. So guess what? When we multiply them together, we get 2x squared, which is our greatest common factor. Cool. Now you get to practice. Find the greatest common factor with these three. So you're going to pause, find it, then press play to check. All right, let's see how you did. First thing we're going to do is look for the smallest exponent, and that's z to the 4th. 12 is the same thing as 4 times 3. There we go. Now let's look at 8z to the 7th. Well, we know that z to the 4th is going to be the smallest exponent, so I needed to write z to the 4th times z to the 3rd. Remember, when we multiply, we add the exponents. When I look at 4 times 3, I want to find a common number in 8. When I look at 12, I have 4 times 3. 3 does not go into 8, but guess what? 4 does. So I'm going to write 4 times 2. So let's write it. Let's look at the last one, 20z to the 9th. Once again, I know that z to the 4th is going to be our smallest exponent, and that's also going to be one of our common factors. So I have z to the 4th times z to the 5th. Remember, when we multiply, we add the exponents. So this is really z to the 9th. So when I look at 20, I know that 4 is probably going to be my common factor, and I happen to know that 4 times 5 is 20. So let's write that in. We're going to circle our common factors, all right? Let's multiply. So we get 4z to the 4th. And guess what? That's it. That's the greatest common factor. Now we're to the self-quiz. You're going to pause the video, find the greatest common factor, then press play to check. No peeking. All right, let's see how you did. So in the first one, I have 9 times 2 and q to the 7th. Did you happen to notice that q to the 7th is the smallest exponent between q to the 7th and q to the 9th? Yeah. And 9 also goes into 27. So let's write our first one here. Okay, then 27 is 9 times 3. Q to the 8th is going to be q to the 7th times q to the 1st, because q to the 7th is the smallest exponent. And let's write that underneath the other one. Now we're going to circle our common factors. Great! So we have 9q to the 7th. And guess what? That's our greatest common factor. I know! Let's look at the next one. 28w to the 12th and 35w to the 10th. Well, w to the 10th is the smallest exponent. So in the first one, when I have 28, I'm going to say 7 times 4. And then I'm going to say w to the 10th times w to the 2nd, because 10 plus 2 is 12. And I'm going to write it out. Okay, I chose 7 times 4 because I know 7 goes into 35. 7 times 5 is 35. Since w to the 10th is the smallest exponent, I'm going to leave it alone. So let's write that out. I'm going to circle my common factors. Great. And guess what? 7w to the 10th is my greatest common factor. Thanks for watching. And you can pin me to Pinterest if you like. The only way to get good at factoring is to practice, practice, practice. Make sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss the next episode. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be factoring some more. Do you have a request? Let me know at picrustable@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait till you join me again.